Hey everybody, it's Joel from Board Game Mechanics, bgmechanics.com. We're better known for our podcast, but we're trying to do some more video stuff, and this is one example. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Scoville by Tasty Minstrel Games. All right, so Scoville is a game where you are trying to plant peppers in a field and then harvest them in order to fulfill certain recipes. It's actually a really neat game. It came out about 3-4 years ago. It was a Kickstarter, and it's one game that I feel like maybe hasn't been as, I don't want to say acclaimed. It's not been as played as I thought it might be. It's actually a really neat game. The people who like this game really love it, and I think I'm in that category of people who really like this game. So let's see if this game's for you. Let's take a look at it. First things first, we have this board here, and this board, a couple interesting things about this board are, one, there are little punch outs for peppers all throughout all those squares there, which is really neat, and I wish more games did that. So you're going to put these peppers in there, and they're not going anywhere. They're going to stay right there. You can hit the board, and they aren't flying around all over the place. So that's pretty awesome. The second one is, I think maybe because of that, or because they wanted to lay extra flat, the puzzle's like Jigsaw. So as far as that goes, I've had this game for over 3 years, and it has not warped or gotten crazy on me. So overall, the board's really nice. It's a nice, colorful game. This is kind of the same style that you'd expect from Tasty Minstrel Games. Kind of that whole Belfort-looking Kings of Erin's team, Scoville, they all kind of have a similar aesthetic to them, which is really pleasant to me. It's kind of a simple cartoonish look, but it's great, and it matches the theme of this game because it's kind of cartoony what we're doing here. We're going out and we're planting peppers, and we're going to harvest them, get these recipes fulfilled. So let's look at the setup here. Everybody starts off with a player board. These player boards are actually really excellent. They're very thick cardboard. They stand up really nicely, and this is the kind of player boards that I wish, or player like little kind of hiding your stuff. I forget what I would want to call that. But anyway, your little player shield, I guess is what we call it, is really nice quality. And I wish more people did a nice quality player shield like that, but they just don't in this day and age. So this is a nice throwback to when player shields were made out of thick board level quality cardboard. As far as what you start off with, if you look on the inside of the shield there, it tells you what you start off with, but I'll just go through it all. You get one of each of the primary color peppers, 10 coins. You get your farmer, you get your like your place order, turn order marker, and then you get these little one-time player powers that you can spend, but if you don't spend them, you get some points at the end of the game. And those kind of let you break rules at different times, like plant an extra pepper, or kind of double back on where you came from, or go an extra spot. So if you use those, there's sometimes where it's really effective to do that, and it would be really important to do that, worth way more than the 4 points you get at the end of the game. But 4 points is actually kind of a nice little amount of points. The crux of the game here is that you're fulfilling orders. So this is the more simple, quick, get money type market. There's two ways that you're going to collect peppers for sale. So this is the market where you're just selling a couple peppers to somebody in exchange for a different kind of pepper and some coins, and then low victory points. So like the highest I think I've seen these cards go up to is 4 victory points. And that's actually in the second phase, which we'll talk a little more about later. But then when this is set up for a 2-player game. There's 9 of these there. When they get exhausted down to a certain level, then we're going to move to the next phase. And again, more about that later. The bigger area where you're going to collect points are these recipe cards here. So this is where you're going to look. It's several peppers there, and they're more powerful peppers. They're more difficult to get peppers. So that one up there that's 24 points, you need 4 transparent or translucent peppers to get that. And to get those peppers, you have to like crossbreed 3 or 4 generations of peppers to get those. So it's really difficult to get that. But that's where the big amount of points is going to come from, by getting those recipes fulfilled. Then at the beginning of the turn, you figure your player order out with this auction mechanic, but then also you get some peppers, you acquire some peppers. So in this turn, somebody could get, a red and a yellow, a pair of blues and a blue. And I'm not sure which one people would take first, but there definitely would be some bidding going on there, because there's a couple of nice 2 pepper cards there. So those are how you acquire some new peppers, as well as harvesting, but we'll get into that later. Also, there are these mayoral plaques. The first person to get across the milestone of planting this type of pepper, you are like a real pioneer of the pepper industry. So the mayor wants to reward you by saying, hey, look at how great your efforts have been. Let's give you some points. So I guess the mayor gives out points in this town. Now here's the initial setup. We're going to put 2 peppers in the pepper field. And look where that star's at. That's actually where your workers are going to go. So they go between the peppers. And wherever they crossbreed at is the kind of pepper you're going to get. So we have a red and a yellow pepper there, which I think you guys can figure out if you've been in a basic art class in elementary school. Red and yellow makes orange. So you're going to get an orange pepper from those 2 peppers by having your guy in that little star spot there. But there's all kinds of hybrids you can get. So there's actually a chart that each player gets that has a little what can you get from these hybrids? So if you look at the really tall, transparent peppers there, you need a black and a white. Well, in order to get a black and a white, you need a purple and a purple, or a purple and a green. And then in order to get greens and purples, you need to mix the primary. So there's 3 or 4 generations to get to those really powerful peppers. Which, I mean, like, based on what I know about Carolina Reapers and ghost peppers and stuff like that, like, I think those are all like crossbred powerful peppers that come from stuff like this. So I think some of this is kind of rooted in reality, that you do definitely breed peppers together. So anyway, cross-pollination, that's like kind of the idea of how you're going to harvest those peppers, is that you go between those 2 peppers. So like in my last example, I'm going to go back to that real quick. If you went in that star spot, you're clearly between those 2 peppers, you'd get the orange. Well, as the game goes on, you're going to have different colors of peppers coming out. Finally, you're going to have your player order here. So this is kind of the last thing that we're going to talk about just real quick here, is that you're bidding on this. And this is kind of a similar bidding mechanism to like Shakespeare or other games where you do a blind auction. You're just going to put some money in your hand and then reveal it at the same time. So I'm going to, I have my coins here. I'm going to, boom. Oh, I had none in there. So then I just basically get the leftovers. If somebody bid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even I've seen more than 5, depending on what kind of cards come out and how important it is to get to what you need to get to first, then you'll get priority selection. And it's not that you're bidding on first player, it's that you're bidding on choosing your spot. Why is that important? Well, because in planning phase, we go in the order from left to right, but then harvesting, we go right to left. And then in fulfillment, we go left to right again. So if I think it's more important that I get to harvest first because there's a really hot spot on the board I want to get to, I might want to take that last spot. If I think it's really important that I'm able to cash in my peppers for one of these specific cards, then I want to really make sure I get that fulfillment spot first. So the player order does kind of matter quite a bit in this game. Okay, so let's take a look here at the different phases of this game. First, we're going to have that auction I just talked about. The auction's where you put the money in your hand, you reveal it, and then you pick your spot. Then you also get to pick a card from that auction block of cards first. Then from that phase, we go into planting. And when you plant, all you do is you take a pepper from your supply and you place it in a field. And the only rule about placing it is you have to place it orthogonally to another pepper. So that means no diagonals. So this is kind of an interesting mechanism because it's really important for you to make the kind of peppers you want. But then also this is where it can kind of get like a touch of a take that element to the game. So, my example that I can think of off the top of my head is my son last night, if you plant brown peppers next to stuff, you kind of pollute it. And it just produces brown peppers, and brown peppers are fine. You can get a lot of orders with brown peppers, but I was really trying to get a green and a green next to each other to get, that next tier of peppers. Well, I kind of put my green in a bad spot where it was kind of boxed in. My son was able to plant first. He put a brown pepper in the spot I needed to put my green in. He totally blocked me out, and it messed me up for a couple turns. So, the planting phase is a little more strategic than people might think. It's just you're picking a place where you're going to put certain peppers to make certain, crossbreeds, and you can get kind of nasty with it sometimes in black people. So that's why that player order kind of does matter again. After we plant our peppers, we go around and then in reverse order, we harvest. And so when you harvest, you move your farmer. Everyone starts in that star that I showed you earlier, and then you move your farmer 1 to 3 spots. So it's basically like you're dragging them on the grid, and they stop on every square that you see on there. So there's like little diamond squares on the little pads, and that counts as a spot. And you go from 1 to 3. The only way you can go 4 is if you play your little chit that says go 1 extra space. And then the only way you can double back is if you play the U-turn thing. So you can kind of only go in a straight line, kind of like Snake, the game Snake, and you can't cross your own tail. So this is kind of strategic too, in that you have to get to the right spots and put yourself in good position. If you get way out in the corners of the board, you can't use other people's peppers that they're planting very well. But if you're crowded up around each other, you block each other. So it's, again, pretty strategic on how you do your movement. Then finally, there's the fulfillment phase. This is where you take your peppers that you've harvested over the previous rounds and say, you know what, I have the set I need to complete this recipe. I'm going to cash these in for that recipe and get these points. Or I have this thing for the market where someone is demanding these things in the market. I'm going to go ahead and cash those in and get that cashed in from the market. So that's another kind of cool phase. And that's, again, in the original player phase of the planning phase. The left to right, the harvesting was right to left. So it kind of balances where you're at in the turn order doing that. But also they're really different things. So if you really care about fulfillment, you'd want to be over on the far left. If you care really a lot about harvesting, you want to be on the right. So finally, there's this thing called time check. And so this is what is kind of interesting about the game. That first market, those blue cards that I said, as these dwindle down, it can shift phases. There's actually 2 decks of auction cards, 2 decks of market cards. So once there's less cards than there are players in the game, then you shift to the afternoon phase of the game. And that's when the market becomes more powerful. That's when there's better peppers that people want to buy at that point. And in the auction block, there's more peppers that come out in the auction block. So there's sets of 3 peppers that come out. There's more powerful peppers that you can get in that auction block. So the game does kind of advance into 2 phases based on kind of a built-in timer. The other way you do time check is you look at the recipes that are left. So as soon as there are fewer recipes left than there are players, then that triggers 1 additional round, then the game's over. Or if in the afternoon phase, the auction cards have less than there are players, then that triggers the additional 1 round and then the game's over. But then the thing where it's a little unique is if both of those things are at the number of players there are or less. So let's say there's 2 cards in the PM market, which I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but I replaced the AM market, the first market, with the second phase market cards. We went through another 9 cards of us fulfilling those simple cards where I cash in, 1 or 2 peppers to get a real quick and easy reward. But then also the recipe cards, which are the more difficult cards to get. If those are both at the number of players we have or less, then basically at that point we just end the game immediately. We don't play 1 more additional round. So the end game you just figure out these little symbols here, the little fire symbols, the number of numbers you have in that, plus 3 coins equals 1 point. So your money is not worth a ton. You definitely, a third of a point per coin. There's definitely times where going further or your choice in the player order it's going to earn you way more than a third of a point. But at the same time, you don't want to bid 10 because that's 3 points. And are you really going to make up 3 points by going first or getting the exact peppers you need? Maybe, maybe not. So it's a balancing on that bidding as well. Here's what the board looks like when you're finished, and you can kind of get a better idea of the movement thing I was talking about. So those little squares on the path there where the guys are walking are your spots. You can go up to 3 spots when you move, but it's like you have to drag the guy on the trail, like is the best way to think about it. And whatever 2 peppers you end up between is where you check your little chart that we referenced earlier, and you get the good stuff. So between a black and a white pepper, I know right off the top of my head, it gives you one of the most powerful, like phantom peppers or ghost peppers or whatever they call them. Between 2 greens is really powerful. Between 2 purples is really powerful. So between two primary colors is going to give you a secondary color. Between 2 secondary colors is going to give you a white or a black, I believe. And then between a secondary and a primary color is going to give you a brown, which browns aren't the best. I mean, they're okay. They definitely fulfill some recipes. And if you really specialize in just getting a ton of brown, you can win doing that. But usually when it comes to getting those brown peppers, they're not going to be something that you can plant very well or use very well. So people try to avoid those, it seems. Although there are definitely strategies where you can say, hey, no one's going for these browns. I'm going to eat the browns up, man. I'm going to get all the browns and all the brown recipes and race to finish this game quick. And maybe that's a valid strategy. I've seen people try that. I don't know that they've won with it, but there's a lot of different paths to victory in this game. So I guess we'll just get into my final thoughts now on this one. I really love this game. It's so good. I haven't played it for a while, and I played it just recently again. And this one holds up way better than I thought. At one point, I thought this game was kind of fiddly and a lot of things going on just for the sake of there being things going on. But now I think maybe my tastes as a gamer have changed a little bit. And all those different paths to victory, I see as fun and opportunities. There's so many different ways you can play this game. You can play, I'm just going to speed through these markets and get as many cheap little point cards as possible and not let other people build up enough strength to get these awesome recipes. Or you could say, I'm going to go for a bunch of these cheap recipes that I can get early in the game. or I'm going to build towards this really big recipe that is going to score at the end that's worth 25 points. A good score in this game, I think, is around maybe 80 to 90. So if you get 2 good recipes filled and maybe 5 or 6 market cards filled, you're doing fairly well. So that's basically how the game works. I really do love it. And what do I love about it? I love that there's really good, meaningful choices in it. I feel like you're building something almost with all those planning things and all the strategic ideas that you follow to try and figure out where you want to place things to get the bright peppers that you want. It's like almost got that Ticket to Ride feel to it of set collection, but you have to really think about how you're going to get the stuff. So the heaviness of this game isn't much more than maybe family weight. It's a family weight plus game, but it's a really excellent game. Really enjoy it. I know there's some expansions out there for it. I have not played with the expansions. I would be really eager to try Scoville Labs, but I just haven't gotten it to the table, haven't had a chance to pick that up. But as far as Scoville, the base game that I'm just talking about right now goes, I absolutely love it. I'm going to give this game a 4 wrench, maybe 4.5 even wrenches out of 5. Just an excellent game. This is one that I hope to play with my co-host on the podcast soon, Jason, and I think he'll really enjoy it as well. But this is just one that I wanted to spotlight because there's a good chance you've never played it, but it's actually a really excellent game. And it's not really worker placement. It's kind of more worker movement, but even then it's got just a lot of interesting things going on. It's mostly set collection. So just really enjoy the game. Really enjoy how it's got this tension of I need to get these things before other people do. You're just trying to keep all these different ideas straight in your mind. It goes really quick. It has really fast pacing to it. I don't think this game's super prone to analysis paralysis. Maybe a little, but the choices are pretty simple, but they're meaningful. So that's it, guys. Have you played Scoville? Do you enjoy Scoville? Let me know in the comments. We're trying to build this YouTube channel up, so please subscribe. And if you haven't checked out our podcast and you enjoy maybe what I had to say here, it's a little more goofy, a little more silly, a little more conversational, but we have a podcast available for you guys at bgmechanics.com, or check us out on Facebook. Just look up Board Game, one word, Mechanics, and we've got the little meeple with the wrenches, and come check out our page. We've got a subgroup inside of there where we like to connect with our fans. So a lot of cool things happening over there. But really love like setting up times to hang out with the fans and meet the fans and connect with you guys. And we're hoping to see a lot of you at Origins. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And we will catch you next time.